There have been so many different Pokemon games over the last 27 years, from the mainline games to loads of side games. There have been games that were just loved, others that were hated, some that were very kind of by the book, and others that were just kind of somewhat forgetful, and a very few that were just hidden gems. But the latest entry in the series, Pokemon Legends Arceus, may be one of the best Pokemon games to date, as it has so many genre changing improvements to the tried and true formula of Pokemon that it will be fascinating to see how much will be implemented in Scarlet and Violet and beyond. That's not to say that Legends Arceus is a perfect game or even a perfect Pokemon game. Graphics and some gameplay aspects are some of the offenders most complained of, and to some extent, rightfully so. But as someone who has played all of the mainline games from release, and quite a few of the side games, in my opinion, Legends Arceus is one of the best Pokemon games ever made up till now. So without further ado, let's get to the list. When I first started up the game and got to the first region, Obsidian Fields, after going through the town and getting my starter, Oshawott all the way, water starters forever, I was awestruck at the world I was walking into. The fact that I was standing in a world that was hardly touched by people and ready to be charted and explored while dealing with Pokemon that actually interacted with me walking by was definitely a dream come true from when little me started playing in 1995 as a young child. The world of Pokemon has now come alive. Yes, I had read that people were upset that there weren't nearly enough Pokemon walking around, or that the world just didn't seem alive to them. And I just shook my head in disbelief. As someone who had grown up in the country, I never saw tons of animals just filling the countryside. There was just enough action in the game to know that Pokemon were around, but believable that they would stay in their own groups, all while giving me a break as a player to take in my surroundings and just live in the world that I found myself in. As a matter of fact, I spent hours just hunting Pokemon and exploring on that first visit to Obsidian Fields before I even kept the main quest line going. This is truly so much more of an epic adventure that I had always dreamed of, that none of the other 3D Pokemon games up to this point had really invested me into. Truly a wonderful experience. While Legends Arceus is not a true open world game in the sense of the genre, it does have open regions like Monster Hunter World and Rise do, or even like Super Mario 64. You can go anywhere that you have access to in these regions, as long as you have the right Pokemon at your side. This still falls in line with the HMs of old, where you had to wait till you got cut or surf to go further along certain routes. This open world region mechanic definitely helped me with a sense of adventure without being too overwhelmed with the entire world getting thrown at me all at once. It also allowed the story to be focused toward each region. So if I didn't want to progress any story, I could always hop over to a different region and go on an adventure there without worrying about wandering into a cutscene or progression. It also makes hunting for Pokemon easier by helping to narrow down regions and areas inside each one. Maybe someday, maybe even soon, Scarlet and Violet, we'll have a true open world Pokemon game. But for now, this definitely is a step forward for a living world of Pokemon. Items have always been part of Pokemon games, but Legends Arceus takes it to a whole new level. In all of the other mainline games, I hardly ever used items because either it was easier to just go to a Pokemon Center, or I would just rather attack instead of wasting moves. Since in the normal story of the game, You can really just get by without using any items other than Pokeballs more often than not, because you can just go and level up. The gameplay in Legends Arceus changes that mentality completely, in my opinion. Due to the different active gameplay mechanics, items mean more, and you can keep using so many of them without having to go back to town. This is where Legends Arceus really takes a step forward towards being more like other RPGs since Pokemon first released. Pokeballs, potions, field items, pretty much every usable item can be crafted while out on the field for quick and easy access to get back into the gameplay. And it's not like there's a lack of ingredients lying around in the overworld. As far as crafting systems go, it is relatively easy to use in Legends Arceus, which makes it all the better. Battling has been a core mechanic through all the mainline Pokemon games, and it is also present in Legends Arceus. Game Freak went with a similar look to Final Fantasy X, even though it is pretty much the classic turn order, but with a little bit of Bravely Default thrown in. The Pokemon will generally take turns going back and forth, but you can look into the top right corner and see that sometimes a Pokemon attacks more than one time in a row. This is where Bravely Default comes in. In Bravely Default, you can choose to bravely attack more than once in a row, or default to a defend position to build up moves to use right in a row. Well, Pokemon took that concept and dialed it back a bit. Instead of building up to 4 moves in a row, you can either do an agile or strong move, which will impact the move order while also changing the strength of the move selected. This not only allows for attempting to finish off an enemy faster, but can also aid in catching Pokemon that are outleveled. This all adds a layer of strategy to a mechanic that hasn't had many changes since the beginning. It doesn't add much, but the fact that Game Freak was willing to try and change the formula means that there has been thinking and planning for the future of the franchise and games, and I'm hopeful that they desire to make the game more amenable to this generation of games and gamers. For decades, Pokemon games have been plagued with a mechanic that required choice, for better or for worse, and it wasn't always easy to undo that choice. That choice was, what 4 moves do you keep, and what do you dump? As battling is one of the main aspects of the game, most RPGs generally let you keep a lot of moves all at one time. But Game Freak made the decision to allow the player to only have 4 moves at one time, which made the game a little more difficult, especially when Pokemon moves were sometimes the only way to progress in the world, like Cut or Surf. In Legends Arceus, though, you can change up the list of 4 moves that you have at any time that you want to outside of battles. This is a quality of life change that just makes sense. There's no reason that a Pokemon can only know 4 moves at once. It makes sense that a Pokemon would know that before going into a battle, that the strategy is to only focus on attacking with 4 moves. It's more like D&D, where you look at your character sheet and you pick your spell slots for the day. This was such a positive mechanic to include in the game. The last reason on this list is how the other large mechanic of the game is implemented. You'd think that for all of the Pokemon games that have come out over the years, there'd be more incentive or reason to actually catch Pokemon before now. Honestly, that hasn't really been the case up until Legends Arceus. Catching Pokemon is the main focus of this game in so many ways. Catching is the first mechanic you are taught to do, even before battling. Catching is so important that it is done both outside and inside of battles. Your mission for the game? Explore the world and learn about the Pokemon that inhabit it. You are literally filling out the Pokedex as you catch Pokemon. Observe them in their habitats, battle them, and see the moves being used in action. The more you do any of these actions, the more you learn about each Pokemon. This goes for all evolutions of each Pokemon, too. So your goal is to hunt them down and catch them all. As you catch Pokemon, you also gain ranking with the town, you get paid for your work, and you get items that can help you with crafting. You also get some experience for every single Pokemon in your team as you catch more and more Pokemon. And because of the crafting element, you can replenish your Pokeball stash without losing the Pokemon that you are hunting. So, for most of the game, you are encouraged to go out and find and catch everything that you can. It made me feel like one of the main themes in the game was meant for me specifically. The only other time I've felt this kind of wonder of exploration and learning more about Pokemon was in Red and Blue, because Pokemon were still a mystery, but you only needed to ever have one of every kind of monster to complete this task. And the more you hunt, especially when there is an outbreak, there's always a chance to find a shiny Pokemon, and who doesn't like finding one of those? If for no other reason in this list, the entire catching mechanic of Legends Arceus makes this game one of the best Pokemon games ever, in my book. And there you have it. My list of 6 reasons as to why Pokemon Legends Arceus is one of the best Pokemon games ever. Do you agree with my list? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. You can find more game content here on this channel, as well as other content often focused on Christianity. You can also catch me streaming over on Hallowed Foxmoon on Twitch, as well as some general fun on Twitter. Thanks again, and God bless your day. Know that Jesus loves you.